Snow whispered across the frozen dirt as morning crept into the small Wyoming town. It was the kind of cold that settled deep in bones, the kind that made even strong men walk slower and breathe heavier. Folks in town gathered near the old auction yard, boots stamping the ground to chase away the bite of winter. Some came to buy. Some came just to watch. And some, like always, came to laugh at what they didn't understand. Tom Merrick stood near the far rail, gloved hands resting on frost-covered wood, his coat older than most men there. His beard was white, trimmed rough but neat, and his eyes carried a calm sadness, the kind earned from burying too many memories and waking up each morning anyway. He didn't speak much. Didn't need to. The world had taken enough noise from him already. When the gate creaked open and the next animal came out, murmurs rippled through the crowd. A thin white stallion, ribs sharp as fence boards, tail tangled like winter brush, limped into the ring. His legs shook under him, breath showing in broken puffs. A scar cut down his left side like someone once hurt him without care. The cold clung to his body as if the world had forgotten to warm him. "Lord, look at that poor thing," someone said. Another voice snorted, cruel and careless. "That ain't a horse. That's a ghost with hooves." Laughter followed, sharp and mean. Tom didn't laugh. His breath puffed slow and quiet. He had seen eyes like that before, eyes that didn't beg, didn't fear, didn't fight. They just held on. Quiet. Tired. Waiting. The same way he once had when the world took more than it ever returned. That stallion wasn't just hurt. He was alone. The auctioneer shook his head. "Anyone? He ain't worth feed." Silence. Cold. More quiet laughter. Tom lifted his hand. "I'll take him." Heads turned. Someone scoffed, "Old fool's lost the last of his sense." Another chuckled, "Guess he wants a ghost to keep him company." Tom ignored them. He didn't argue with empty hearts. He only walked to the gate where the stallion stood shaking, lowered his gloved hands slow, and whispered through the winter air. "You're coming home, boy. We get through this together." And for the first time that morning the wind did not feel so cruel. The stallion hesitated at the trailer ramp, hooves sliding slightly on the icy wood. His breath came in uneven clouds, and every muscle along his thin body trembled like life still wasn't sure if it wanted to stay with him. Tom didn't pull. Didn't force. He stood beside the ramp, rope loose in his hand, voice gentle enough to warm a cold day. "It's all right," he murmured. "One step. Just one." The stallion lifted his head, ears twitching toward the small sound of kindness. Snowflakes gathered on his mane like tiny silver feathers. He shifted, hooves scraping, then stepped forward, slow, unsure but willing. Tom nodded, as if the moment deserved the quiet respect it earned. A truck pulled up nearby, tires crunching frozen gravel. Young men hopped out, loud, jackets too clean, eyes too quick to judge. One smirked as he watched. "You planning to enter him in a race, old man?" Tom didn't look up. "Planning to give him a chance." The boy laughed. "A chance at what? Falling over again?" His friends snickered, and for a moment the cold air felt sharp again. Tom's jaw tightened, but he didn't swing his voice like a weapon. Some battles weren't worth fighting with anger. The stallion took his second step, and Tom focused on that, on the courage it took to move when the world laughed behind you. Finally, the horse settled inside the trailer. Tom latched the door, patting the worn wood like sealing a promise. The stallion lowered his head, exhausted but calmer now, as if the old man's stillness had given him a place to rest his fear. The boys climbed back into their truck, shaking their heads. As they drove off, one shouted, "You're wasting your time." Tom watched the snow drift in the air, slow and steady. "Time's all I've got left," he whispered to himself. "Might as well spend it right." The engine of his old pickup groaned awake. Snow crunched under tires as Tom pulled away, the road stretching quiet under the pale winter sky. Inside the trailer, the stallion shifted once, not in panic but settling. Trust wasn't there yet. But maybe the beginning of it was. Tom looked at the fading town in his rearview mirror. He'd buried his wife on land beyond those hills. Buried his youth too. But today he wasn't carrying loss. He was carrying someone who needed not to be left behind again. And somehow in that quiet moment the world felt a little less empty. Snow glimmered beneath Tom's tires as he guided the truck down the long country road. Fences rolled past, half buried in drifts, fields spread wide and silent like winter was holding its breath. Inside the trailer, the white stallion shifted again, slow, tired movements as if he wanted to lie down but didn't trust the world enough to rest just yet. Tom kept glancing in the side mirror, not worried about the road, but about the soul riding behind him. His ranch sat at the foot of low hills, where wind always found a way to whisper through bare cottonwood branches. When he pulled in, the old gate creaked open like an old man waking from a nap. Fence rails leaned, barn paint peeled, and the windmill turned with the rhythm of something stubborn enough to still try. The place looked worn, but not forgotten. Like Tom. He parked, stepped out slow, and walked to the trailer door. Frost bit at his gloves. He unlatched the gate and pulled it open, voice soft as snowfall. "Come on now. Home ain't fancy, but it's honest." The stallion stood still. For a long moment he didn't move. His ears twitched, breath clouded the cold air. Fear, memory, exhaustion, all tangled inside him like knots that hadn't loosened in years. Tom didn't cluck or tug. He just waited. Patience wasn't a trick, it was a language. Finally the horse took one shaky step out. Then another. Hooves touched snow, then dirt, then hay scattered by the barn door. He lifted his head, nostrils flaring at smells of earth, wood, and quiet. The wind brushed his mane. Something like safety brushed his heart. A neighbor's truck rolled by on the road, engine growling like it wanted attention. A voice called through the window, half laughing, half pitying. "Tom, you collecting ghosts now?" Tom didn't bristle. He resting a hand on the stallion's neck. "Sometimes ghosts just need someone to call them back," he answered. The truck drove off without another word. Winter silence returned, softer than before. Tom led the horse toward the barn. Inside, one stall waited already bedded with straw. Tom had prepared it before leaving that morning. Hope always worked before success arrived. The stallion sniffed the bedding, then slowly lowered his head, touching the straw like he was remembering softness for the first time in years. Tom leaned his weight on the gate, breath slow, shoulders easing. "You rest now," he murmured. "You made it through today. That's enough." The white stallion exhaled, a long, tired breath that sounded like surrender, not to defeat but to peace. Tom covered him with a wool blanket, gentle hands, steady touch. Outside, snow fell again, light, peaceful, unhurried. Inside, warmth settled, quiet as healing beginning its first small step. Tom whispered into the still air, more to himself than the horse. "One day at a time. That's how we both get home." The next morning rose slow and gray, the kind of winter light that didn't rush to wake the world. Tom stepped onto the porch with a thermos of coffee warming his gloved hands. Frost hugged every fence post, every blade of brittle grass. A coyote's distant howl faded into quiet. He listened. Morning always spoke softly on ranch land, you had to earn the right to hear it. Inside the barn, straw rustled. Tom slid the stall door open. The white stallion lifted his head, eyes soft but guarded, breath clouding in the cold. Not fear this time, caution shaped by memory. Tom smiled gently, boots crunching on the frozen floor. "Mornin', boy," he said, keeping his voice low, steady. "You made it through another night." He set warm mash in the trough, oats softened in water heated on the old stove before sunrise. The stallion sniffed, hesitated, then ate. Not desperate, not frantic, but with slow trust forming like a thin sheet of ice strengthening under quiet weather. Tom leaned on the rail, sipping coffee, watching every small movement like it mattered. Because it did. A pickup engine approached. Tires rolled over frozen gravel. Tom sighed softly, peace never stayed alone long. The barn door pushed open and a man stepped inside, tall, younger than Tom, coat zipped high, confidence stiffening his shoulders. "Paul Gibbons, neighbor." Loud voice in a quiet world. "Heard you brought home some charity case," Paul smirked, hands shoved in pockets. "Town's talkin'. Tom didn't turn. Town always talks when its hands are empty. Paul chuckled, shaking snow off his boots. "You really think that horse is worth saving? Looks like wind could knock him over." The stallion flinched at the sharp voice, head rising, muscles tensing. Tom placed his palm gently on the horse's neck. "He's worth the time." Paul rolled his eyes, leaning against a post. "Time's a fool's investment when there's no return." Tom turned then, eyes tired but steady. "Returns aren't always money." Paul snorted. "Spoken like a man with nothing left to lose." "Or a man who found something worth holdin'," Tom replied quietly. Silence settled between them. For a second, winter air felt heavier. Paul stared, confused, as if kindness was a language he forgot. Then he shrugged. "Suit yourself," he muttered, backing out. "Don't say I didn't warn you." When he left, peace drifted back in like snow settling on a fence. Tom brushed the stallion's mane, slow strokes, patient hands. The horse exhaled, shoulders easing again. Tom spoke softly. "Some folks never healed right, so they don't believe in healing at all. The stallion lowered his head, finishing his mash. Tom rested his palm against the horse's warm neck, feeling heartbeat under skin, faint but steady. "Don't worry," he whispered. "We'll teach him what patience can do." Outside, sunlight finally broke through clouds, laying a gentle beam across the barn floor, thin, pale, but real. Like hope learning to stand again. And as Tom latched the stall door gently, he felt something stir in his chest, a quiet certainty. Healing didn't need applause. It just needed time and someone who stayed. The fifth morning came colder than the rest, the kind of cold that made fence wire sing in the wind and breath hang heavy like smoke. Tom walked to the barn slowly, boots sinking into snow packed down by days of footsteps. He didn't hurry. Trust wasn't grown with speed. Inside, the white stallion stood waiting, head lifted a little higher than yesterday. His eyes, once hollow like winter without fire, now held a flicker, not brightness yet, but curiosity. The blanket still rested on his back, warm against thin ribs. Tom set a hand gently on his neck. "You still here?" Tom whispered with a small smile. "That's all you need to be today." He set a fresh bucket of warm mash down, steam rising. The stallion ate slow, steady. Tom brushed frozen straw from his coat, each stroke gentle as snow landing on pine. The quiet inside the barn felt different now, not empty but building. A small crunching sound broke the stillness. Tom turned. A bicycle rolled down the frozen road, tires cracking ice, and a boy in a wool hat and oversized jacket pedaled up, breath puffing white clouds. The same boy from town, cheeks red from cold and curiosity. He leaned on the fence, wide-eyed. "Mr. Tom, is that the horse everyone laughed about?" Tom didn't flinch. "He's a horse everyone gave up on. Not the same thing." The boy climbed off the bike, careful steps in snow. "He looks better than they said." Tom raised a brow. "What did they say?" The boy hesitated. "That you lost your mind trying to fix something that's finished." Tom walked to the fence, resting his arms over the top rail. "Some things ain't finished," he said softly. Just paused. The boy nodded as if those words made things in his life make more sense too. The stallion lifted his head, watching them both. The boy stepped closer, slow as a prayer. Can I stand here for a bit?" Tom nodded. "Quiet is all I ask." They stood there, old man, young boy, wounded horse, breathing in the same cold air, sharing silence that felt like connection instead of emptiness. Snowflakes drifted through gaps in the barn roof, soft and delicate. After a long moment, the stallion took one small step forward, toward them. His hooves sank in the hay, breath warm, eyes gentle. Tom didn't move, didn't speak. He simply let the moment breathe. The boy whispered, "He came on his own." Tom nodded, voice low. "That right there is courage. Doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just walks one quiet step closer." The boy smiled, shy and small. "I want to see him again." "You can," Tom replied. "Good hearts always welcome here." The boy rode away, wheels carving lines in the snow. Tom watched until he disappeared over the hill. Back inside, he stroked the stallion's jaw. "We ain't alone anymore, huh?" The stallion closed his eyes, leaning into the touch ever so slightly. Small progress. Quiet progress. Real progress. Outside, winter wind howled across empty land, but inside the barn, warmth settled in like a blessing. And Tom whispered as if sealing a promise, "We're getting somewhere, boy. One breath at a time." The sixth day brought a sky the color of pewter, heavy with snow waiting to fall. Tom walked across the yard with a slow, steady pace, the kind men earned after years of burden carried and put down, picked up and put down again. He whistled softly, not to call the stallion, but to let him know someone was coming who meant no harm. Inside the barn, the white stallion lifted his head before Tom even opened the door. He didn't panic at the sound, didn't brace his legs, didn't flinch at the hinge squeak. His ears flicked forward, alert, aware, but calmer. Tom let warmth settle in his chest at the sight. Healing was never loud, it showed up in small quiet behaviors like this. He set the warm mash down and brushed snow off his hat. "We're learning each other's mornings, aren't we?" he murmured. The stallion blinked slowly, chewing, breath rising steady and soft. After feeding, Tom slipped a loose rope on, not to pull, only to guide. "Let's stretch our legs." Outside, snow began to fall, soft flakes drifting like feathers shaken from the sky. Tom led him to the small round pen, boots crunching in the frost. The stallion hesitated only once at the gate. Tom paused with him. "No hurry," he said. "You move when your fear gets tired." And slowly the stallion stepped inside. They walked in circles, wide at first, then closer. Tom didn't ask for speed, didn't force obedience. He simply moved, breathing calm, letting the horse match him. Snow gathered on the stallion's eyelashes like tiny pearls. His hooves left gentle prints in the powder. There was something holy about the quiet. Halfway through, a voice broke the still air. "Well, I'll be. You actually gettin' somewhere?" Paul's truck sat near the fence, door open, his breath fogging in the cold. But his voice wasn't mocking this time, only surprised. Curious even. Tom didn't break rhythm. Every broken thing tries again eventually. Just depends who's there when it does. Paul shoved his hands in his pockets. Never seen a horse like that trust again. Tom shrugged. Maybe he ain't trusting yet. Maybe he's just tired of being afraid. Paul stared a long moment, then gave a small nod, not respect yet but the beginning of it, and drove off without another word. The stallion stopped walking and looked at Tom. Tom rubbed between his ears gently. "You did just fine." Flakes fell thicker now, catching in the stallion's mane, turning him into something almost myth-like, a ghost turning back into flesh. They headed back to the barn, slow side-by-side steps. Tom opened the stall door and the stallion entered without hesitation. Progress again, quiet but undeniable. Tom leaned his forehead briefly against the horse's neck, breath warming the cold air. "You're teaching me patience right along with yourself," he whispered. Outside, the first full snow of the storm began to fall, covering footprints, fences, memories, mistakes. But inside the barn, two souls warmed the space simply by not giving up. Winter tried to bury the world that day. But healing, slow and stubborn, kept rising. By the next morning, the world lay under a deep white blanket. Snow covered fence rails, roofs, and the old windmill blades, muting every sound except the soft crunch beneath Tom's boots. The cold bit at his cheeks, but there was a warmth inside him that winter couldn't touch anymore, the kind that comes when life begins to answer you back. When he slid the barn door open, the stallion lifted his head immediately. Not startled, aware. His breath rose in soft clouds, hooves softly shifting on straw. Tom smiled quietly, like a man who didn't need applause to feel proud. "We're buildin' a habit," he murmured. "You seeing me and me seeing you." He laid warm mash down. The horse ate with steady mouthfuls, no rush, no fear. Progress had taken root. Tom reached for the brush and began slow strokes down the stallion's neck. The coat, once dull, now held a faint sheen, small proof of rest, warmth, and food doing their quiet work. Snowflakes drifted through a gap in the barn roof, landing on the horse's mane like stars melting against moonlight skin. "Every day a little more alive," Tom whispered. Footsteps sounded outside, light ones. The barn door eased open and the boy from the bike stepped in, hat dusted with snow, cheeks pink from cold. His eyes shone with excitement. "Mr. Tom, I told my mom I wanted to help today. She said I could watch as long as I stayed out of the way." Tom nodded, gentle. "You're welcome here. But here we move quiet." The boy nodded and tucked his hands behind his back, standing like he was in church. The stallion's ears flicked toward him. Tom watched closely. The horse didn't retreat. Just breathed, slow and steady. "You can talk to him," Tom whispered. The boy swallowed, voice small but sincere. I'm glad you're feeling better." To everyone's surprise, the stallion took one step closer, slow, deliberate. The boy froze, eyes wide, breath held like a small prayer. Tom didn't speak. He let the moment belong to the boy and the horse. The stallion lowered his head slightly, as if to say, "I hear you." The boy's eyes shined. "He does trust you," he breathed. Tom shook his head softly. "No, son. He's learning to trust the world again. I'm just holding the door open." A truck engine rumbled outside. The barn lights flickered as another visitor stepped inside, this time a woman, the boy's mother. Her face held concern, respect, and something else, relief. "I hope he isn't bothering you," she said. Tom shook his head. "He's learning something important here." The boy smiled up at his mother. "He's learning to be gentle, Mom?" The woman looked at Tom, and for a heartbeat her eyes softened, like she understood a weight he'd carried long before the horse arrived. "We all could use a little gentleness," she whispered. They stood in quiet, three humans and one healing soul sharing air warmed not by fire, but by patience. Outside, snow continued to fall. Inside, hope continued to rise, slow, strong, without ceremony. Tom brushed the stallion once more and whispered, "Every good story starts small. We're just writing ours one quiet morning at a time." And the horse blinked, peaceful as snowfall, as if he finally believed that his story wasn't ending, it was beginning. That afternoon, clouds rolled heavy across the sky, smudging the horizon in shades of iron and slate. A storm wasn't coming, it was already here, just waiting to loosen its grip. Tom knew winter moods like he knew his own. Quiet, heavy, and hard to read unless you lived through enough of them. He stepped into the barn again after lunch, brushing snow from his coat. The stallion stood calmer now, not glued to the back of the stall like before. His ears flicked forward, curious, not frightened. It was a small miracle that no one in town would notice. But Tom noticed everything these days. Ready to stretch again? Tom asked softly. The horse followed him out into the round pen, snow falling in thick flakes around them, settling in mane and mustache. Wind pushed across the open land, but Tom's voice cut through it in a calm, steady line. Easy steps. Just us in the morning. They walked slow circles, the stallion's hooves making soft crunches in the snow. Each breath between them felt shared, like two tired souls learning how to breathe in the same world again. And then, without cue, the stallion stopped and leaned his head gently against Tom's shoulder. Tom froze. That simple weight, thin as it was, felt like a universe shifting back into place. His breath caught. A part of him that had been silent for years cracked open just a little, like ice breaking to let moving water breathe again. He lifted one hand, rested it on the horse's cheek. "You remembering how to stand with someone, aren't you?" The moment broke when tires crunched on snow outside the fence. Aaron, Tom's nephew, climbed out of a truck, jacket zipped up to his jawline, arms crossed against the cold and maybe pride too. He walked toward the pen, boots heavy in the snow. "Uncle," he called, tone softer than the last time he was here, "needed to check on you." He paused when he saw the stallion pressed against Tom. "He trusts you?" Tom didn't turn, just nodded slightly. "He's learnin'. Aaron kicked snow at his boots, jaw tightening then loosening. "I brought fence wire. Thought you might need some." He held up a coil awkwardly, like an apology made out of metal. Tom finally looked at him. Not surprised. Not emotional. Just steady. "Thank you." Awkward quiet sat between them, the kind born from years of unsaid things. Aaron cleared his throat. Didn't think a horse like that could come back. Tom brushed the stallion's neck gently. "Most things can, if someone sticks around long enough." Aaron's eyes lowered. "I haven't always been here." Tom didn't make him suffer the weight of confession. "You're here today." A single nod. No long talk. Just truth settled like snow, quiet, soft, final. The wind eased. The storm paused. The stallion lifted his head and took one step toward Aaron. Small step. Big meaning. Aaron shifted, surprised. He doesn't mind me." Tom smiled faintly. "Maybe he sees a man tryin' again." Aaron blinked, swallowed hard, then set the coil down near the fence. "I'll help fix the south rail tomorrow." "Tomorrow's good," Tom said. That was all. That was enough. As Aaron drove away, Tom rested his hand against the stallion's cheek again. Snow drifted around them like dust shaken from heaven's coat. "You're not the only one comin' back to life," he whispered softly. The horse exhaled warm mist into winter air, and the ranch breathed a little fuller, as if healing had more than one heart to work on now. Outside, snow kissed every fence and every memory. Inside this small circle of land, trust took another slow, beautiful breath. The ninth day broke brighter than the ones before, sunlight dripping over snow like honey poured on cold marble. The air was still sharp enough to sting a man's lungs, but warmth sat underneath it, quiet, patient, waiting its turn. Tom stood on the porch longer than usual, coffee steaming in his hands, watching the soft clouds of breath rising from the stallion's silhouette inside the barn window. A sight that once looked like burden now looked like purpose. He walked in slow, boots brushing snow from the threshold. The stallion turned toward him, not startled, just aware, like someone greeting a familiar voice. Tom set the feed, brushing frost off the bucket. "Morning," he whispered. "The world didn't give up on you last night. That's something. After feeding, he opened the stall and led the stallion outside. No rope today, just company. Snow had crusted firm overnight, crunching under hooves and boots. The stallion stepped into the open air, chest expanding, breath rolling like smoke from a train leaving a once-abandoned station. Tom rested a hand on the fence, watching him. "Go ahead," he murmured. "You don't have to stay small anymore." The stallion walked forward, then paused, turning to look back, checking, not clinging. Tom lifted two fingers, a soft signal. "I'm here." And the horse continued, each step surer than the last. Down the road, tires rolled again. But this time the truck didn't stop with a smirk. It slowed with caution. Daniel Hayes, the very man who'd sold this horse half-starved and hollow, pulled up, engine rumbling like guilt held in metal. He stepped out, boots fresh, coat expensive, eyes searching the scene as if trying to understand what he was looking at. "He looks different," Daniel muttered. Snow fell silent around them. Tom didn't look at him. "Pain don't stay forever," he said. "Not when someone stays longer than the hurt." Daniel exhaled, breath shaky. "I didn't think he had anything left." Tom ran his hand along the fence rail. "Sometimes folks don't see worth unless it shines." Daniel shifted, hands buried deep in pockets like he was afraid of the cold truth more than the winter air. "I got another one," he said. "Mean. Wild. Can't keep handlers. I don't know what to do with him." Tom turned this time. His eyes weren't angry, just old, tired in the way men get when they've seen too much quitting in the world. "If you're asking me to break him, I don't do break-in. Daniel swallowed. "I'm asking if you'll help him." Tom held silence a moment, long enough that the wind paused with him. "If he's hurt, not wicked, bring him." Daniel nodded, a man relieved and humbled. He turned to leave but paused. "I didn't deserve to be told yes." Tom answered soft, "Sometimes mercy ain't about who deserves. It's about who needs." When the truck pulled away, the stallion lifted his head, ears turning toward the sound, then toward Tom, checking again. Tom walked out and stood beside him. No rope. No control. Just presence. "See," Tom whispered. "The world shows up different when you start showing up different." The horse leaned his shoulder softly against Tom's arm, not leaning for balance but for company. Tom didn't move away. They stood like that while wind combed the snow and silence held them clean and whole. Healing wasn't finished, but it no longer felt impossible. And as Tom brushed a few flakes off the horse's mane, he whispered, "You're not just alive. You're starting to live." Outside the ranch, winter still ruled. Inside their trust, spring had already begun to thaw. The 10th morning arrived with a hush, the kind that only comes when winter pauses to listen. Frost shimmered like crushed diamonds across the pasture, and the air carried that quiet promise, not warmth yet, but the hint of it. Tom tightened his coat and walked toward the barn, a slow, proud stride replacing the careful, hesitant steps of the early days. Before he even opened the door, he heard soft movement inside, not frantic, not restless, just life stirring with purpose. When he slid the door open, the white stallion lifted his head high, ears forward, eyes bright with a new sharpness. Not fear. Awareness. Pride. "Well now," Tom murmured, voice warm as stove coffee. "You're standin' tall today." The stallion snorted, a warm puff swirling in the cold. Tom poured warm mash, but the horse didn't rush toward it. He stepped forward toward Tom instead. A simple thing, small, but it made Tom's throat tighten the way quiet victories do. "You're choosing me before breakfast?" Tom chuckled softly. "You're making an old man feel mighty important." After feeding, Tom opened the barn door. The stallion walked out without waiting to be asked, tail lifting slightly in the crisp air, not high, not proud yet, but alive. Really alive. Snow crunched behind them. Tom turned. Paul was there, hands in gloves, shoulders hunched against the cold, but his voice gentle for once. "Fence post snapped in the wind," he said. "Thought you might need help fixin' it." Tom nodded. "I'd be grateful." Together, the two men worked in steady silence while the stallion grazed nearby, head raised every few minutes just to make sure Tom was still there. Not anxious, just connected. At one point, Paul paused, leaning on a fence rail. "Town says you're making that horse something special." Tom straightened a nail with the hammer. "Town don't know much, till it sees something finished." Paul kicked at the snow, thinking. "You think I ever gave up too quick on things?" Tom glanced over. Beneath the rancher's pride, there was the quiet confession of a man who'd been rough on life because life had been rough on him. "Most men do," Tom replied. "Difference is whether you learn better." Paul nodded slow. "Reckon I'd like to try." Tom didn't say he was proud. Didn't clap his shoulder. Didn't preach. He just passed him another post clip, hands steady and simple. "A good place to start," he said, "is stayin' when it's slow and boring. Most folks quit before patience starts workin' to." A flake of snow landed on Paul's hat. He brushed it off, then squinted toward the stallion. "He don't look broken anymore." Tom looked too, the white horse standing tall in winter light, strong as quiet truth. "He never was," Tom said. "Just hurt. Big difference." A gust of wind swept across the pasture, but instead of flinching, the stallion lifted his head and let it pass through his mane like a banner. Tom breathed in deep, air cold enough to sting, clean enough to heal. Somewhere inside, something settled again. He wasn't just saving a life, he was rebuilding his own one quiet day at a time. The fence was mended, the morning was quiet, and the horse stood steady like a promise kept. And Tom whispered, not to be heard but to make it real. Look at us. We're learning to stand again. The wind answered soft. The snow fell gentle. And nothing about that moment needed applause. On the 11th day dawn didn't creep, it burst. Pink light stretched across the sky like someone finally remembered to paint life back into the morning. The frost glistened, the wind felt softer, and even the barn seemed to breathe easier. Tom stood at the door a moment longer than usual, letting the sight fill him in places he once believed were empty forever. He opened the stall and the white stallion stepped out with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. His coat, once dull and lifeless, now carried a soft glow even under winter clouds. His eyes no longer looked through Tom, they looked to him. And that mattered more than strength, speed, or ribbons ever could. Today Tom didn't bring a rope, didn't bring a brush, didn't bring a halter. He simply walked. The stallion followed, not out of fear, not out of need, but out of trust. They crossed the yard together, side by side, snow crunching beneath them like applause too polite to interrupt. Tom led him to the open pasture, gate sliding open with a long tired groan. Months ago, Tom had stood at this same gate feeling like a man whose life had already happened. Today it felt like a man whose life was quietly returning. You don't need to stay in fences forever, Tom whispered, hands resting in soft snow-covered wood. Just stay in the moments that deserve you. The stallion stepped into the field. He didn't bolt. He didn't freeze. He simply walked slowly forward, breath warm in the cold morning, tail swaying gently. He paused halfway, turned back, checking. Not afraid. Just making sure the world that hurt him once still had space where he belonged. Tom lifted two fingers, that small familiar signal. Go on. I'm not going anywhere. The horse moved farther now, head high, neck arched with quiet grace, a creature not erased by pain but shaped by surviving it. A soft voice came from behind. You did it. Tom turned. The boy and his mother stood by the fence, bundled in coats, cheeks pink, eyes shining. The boy's hat was crooked, his gloves too big, but his smile belonged to someone who had seen something sacred and understood it without needing fancy words. Tom looked back at the stallion. No, he said gently. We did. He walked through the pain. I just kept the door from closing. The mother nodded, eyes glistening. My son, he talks different since he started watching you too. Softer. Kinder. Tom's voice almost caught. Kindness changed people, not in loud ways but the way winter melts. Slow, steady, leaving ground ready for spring. The boy climbed the fence rails careful. Mr. Tom, he whispered, he's like you. Tom frowned softly. How you figure that? The boy didn't hesitate. You both got hurt. But you didn't stop being good. For a moment Tom had no words. He swallowed hard, looking down as if grounding himself in snow and soil. Then he placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. Thank you, he murmured. Took me a long time to see that kindness ain't weakness. The boy nodded like he'd discovered a secret. The stallion turned again, farther now but eyes still holding connection. Not just to Tom, but to the world that once shut him out. Tom rested his palms on the rail, breath steady. He ain't leavin', Tom whispered to the wind. He's learnin' he can stay by choice. And in that moment, with snow falling soft, voices quiet, hearts open, the ranch didn't feel old or empty anymore. It felt like it had room for beginnings. The 12th morning rose clear and gentle, as if winter itself paused to admire what patience had built. The sky held soft streaks of gold and pale blue, and the ranch lay still like a painting waiting to breathe. Tom stood at the porch rail, hands wrapped around a warm mug, watching steam curl into the cold air. His bones were old, but his heart felt young in a way it hadn't in years. When he stepped toward the pasture, the white stallion didn't wait inside a barn or linger near a stall. He was already standing at the fence line, strong, tall, mane clean and shimmering under the morning sun like snow lit from beneath. He wasn't the ghost Tom had brought home. He wasn't a shadow of pain. He was alive again. Tom opened the gate, no rope, no halter, just trust. The stallion stepped through, brushing his muzzle lightly against Tom's coat like a quiet thank you. Tom touched his neck in return, not to guide but to honor. You ready to see what a future feels like? Tom asked softly. The stallion walked beside him across the open field. No rush. No fear. Snow crunched under hooves and boots, and a soft wind tugged at Tom's coat like an old friend trying to nudge him toward spring. A line of cars approached on the road, slow, respectful. Paul, Aaron, the boy and his mother, and even Daniel. They gathered near the fence, not to judge but to witness. People didn't come today to see a failure. They came to see a miracle made quietly, one sunrise at a time. Aaron leaned on the post, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Never thought I'd say this," he murmured, "but you were right. Kindness don't break a man. It builds him." Tom only nodded, eyes never leaving the stallion. "And it builds whatever it touches." Daniel removed his hat. "I didn't just bring a wounded horse that day," he admitted, voice rough. "I brought my guilt. You didn't throw either back at me." Tom's answer was simple. Hurt people hurt things. Healed people help heal. Silence settled, soft, sacred like fresh snow. The boy climbed the fence and whispered, "Is he free now, Mr. Tom?" Tom's eyes softened, warming the cold air. "Freedom ain't running away. Freedom is standing still without fear." Right then the stallion lifted his head high, mane catching the winter sun, tail flicking with quiet pride. He stepped forward, then turned back, not to ask permission but to share the moment with the man who stayed. Tom breathed in, deep, steady, grateful. "You came back to life," he whispered. "And you brought me with you." The stallion exhaled, a warm cloud in the cold morning, and nudged Tom gently before trotting a slow, confident loop across the field, not fleeing, just showing the world he belonged again. The boy clapped softly. The adults smiled without speaking. And Tom closed his eyes for a moment, letting peace settle in his chest like a horse settling into clean straw. Healing had come without noise, without reward, without witnesses, until today. Today it stood proud in the snow, in the man who refused to give up, and in the stallion who refused to stay broken. Some prayers aren't spoken. Some victories don't shout. Some lives don't end, they restart quietly. And as the stallion returned to stand beside Tom, calm and unafraid, Tom whispered the truth that carried them both here. Gentle is not weak. Gentle is undefeated. White heavy checkmark moral of the story. True strength is not in force, but in patience, kindness, and staying when others walk away. Healing doesn't rush. It listens. It waits. And then, slowly, beautifully, it rises,